the streets and in the hills above the South Bay, there is a different chase. A state fish and game warden who was shot during a raid on a pot farm is now telling his story for the very first time. His ordeal is part of a growing concern over hidden drug dens.
You know, it's just, I'll never forget every minute, every second, how visceral that incident was, because it was the first time I had been in a gunfight. More importantly, it was the first time we'd ever had somebody hurt. You know, the helplessness of knowing that if he doesn't get rescued soon, there's nothing more we can do. He's gonna die of blood loss, go into shock, and he was starting to show those signs. It's the Wild West. You would not think you're in California, right? And all of these folks now are surrounded by 10,000 or even more than 10,000 illegal grow sites, primarily Chinese and Hmong, some Mexican cartels. But then we would run into a handful of them that were in a really, what do I call a really aggro cell, aggressive. And we had a west side of the Santa Cruz Mountains in Silicon Valley, man, literally looking up to the west at the mountains above Meta headquarters and Cisco and eBay, no joke, where we had multiple gunfights. And you're looking at those mountains, and those are some of the most violent and vicious operators from the cartels that I'd ever run into. And I did not know how embedded it was. And I'm taking this to say my hometown of Silicon Valley is just a bullet point example for every state in the union, and every region, rural or urban, has that presence of cartel crimes and cartel products. And when this guy is just laughing when I'm talking about, well, how do you get him across the border? How hard is it with border patrol? And, he goes, he laughed and said, we don't consider that border a border. That's just the division between Mexico North and Mexico South. And that thing you guys call the border, it's like a speed bump on the freeway. $4,000 to $7,000 out of my organization making millions gets my best growers, my best traffickers up here in 24 to 48 hours. The Chinese want the weed trade because it's a cash business. And they want a ton of currency right here in America that they can launder, that they don't have to ship back to mainland China. Idea is, in theory, they want to dominate basically the currency by 2035 and run a World Bank standard under the Chinese currency structure. And they can do that by having a whole lot of cash to start now. So they want to amass a ton of cash, and they're doing it. And what they're doing is, in exchange for them getting into the weed trade, which we're seeing a lot more of, not only in California, but all the eastern states, southwestern states, but now they're gonna launder Sinaloa's money for less than they were paying before. And then as the relationship got better and more effective, it was, okay, now you're paying 4, now you're paying 3, and now it's down to they're not paying anything. Chinese are doing it for them for 0 and supplying the precursor chemicals for fentanyl, because we know so many of them come from China. My assistant team leader, who later became the team leader and met behind me, Shang, his call sign in the book, he basically secured that grow site for the rest of the day with the rest of our team. Not only, overseeing the eradication, but clearing the rest of the grow we had not gotten into yet, because it was a kitchen lower on the mountain we were working our way up to when this guy came down on us with a weapon out. And what was interesting is I got a call. Shane just goes, dude, we are so lucky that we had that engagement down there, because up here, when you get to the bottom of the big grow site at the top of the mountain, you work through the grow site, and their encampment is in massive, super thick redwood trees that afford like a shade cave. They have like a rifle sight, and he's sending me photos. And there's a rifle sight of where they lay in a depressed, with a little bit of berm in front of them, in a depressed campground in their tent, where they can lay right in their tent undetected. And they had an SKS, they had another bolt rifle, I believe, they had a shotgun, a handgun, I believe, as well. And lean over, and he goes, there's no way a team that isn't really trained and seen a lot of this would not got shot up.